Welcome back to RFL. A few headlines now on the evolution of gun laws in America. Since the Newtown massacre, efforts to curb gun violence have taken center stage, as you well know. However, different communities have proposed wildly different ways to cope with the problem. In Colorado, for example, the state Senate voted on a host of bills today. The ones that passed include legislation that requires gun purchasers, to pay for their own criminal background checks. It also expanded background checks, including for private sales. And there was also a bill that would require domestic abusers to relinquish their guns, turn them over to the authorities. Meanwhile, in Maine, residents of a small town are considering legislation that would require each household to have a firearm. That vote would be mostly symbolic. Maine law bars municipalities from legislating on firearms. Let's shift over to South Dakota, where Governor Dennis Daugaard signed a bill on Friday that allows teachers to carry guns in school. South Dakota now the first state to enact such a law since Newtown. Meanwhile, some towns across America have already begun assigning armed police officers to school guards. One of those towns was Highland, New York, but the program has now been suspended. Why? Because an officer accidentally discharged his pistol in a high school hallway while classes were in session. And of course, guys, we have the bills that are before Congress right now. That includes a semi-auto or an assault weapons ban, an expanded ammo mag ban, and some other legislation as well. But when you have different municipalities in different states treating the same problems in very different ways, what does that tell us about the gun debate? Is it going to be a location-specific solution, or are we going to be able to get national policy?
Well, I think that when we started this debate a long time ago, after Columbine and all the different things that happened, we had an assault weapon ban in place, and then it sunsetted. But yet a lot of states, including New York, picked it up and did it from a state perspective. I think what you're having here is probably the best evidence of just how culturally divided we are as a nation on guns. We can't decide one way or the other. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And I've said this before, I think it's less a debate about states as it is between a rural community and an urban community.
Well, that's what every debate is about, right? Metro versus retro. I think that it's great to see these states passing legislation that's going to help lower violence in those states. But the reality is that you need a federal law, or else you're going to have people just going from Chicago to Kentucky and buying their arms and then moving back to Chicago. Right. So we need to address this in a big federal way.
So the regional solution isn't going to work, right? You can't have a law for New York City and another law for New York State.
For the reason that was just stated, no, you can't. But one thing I will say, when you've driven the hills and the roadways of Idaho and Iowa and South Dakota, you can because us as Northerners or urban, whatever, we don't understand what these folks are doing, But when you're in these communities, it makes a lot of sense. There's a gun culture, and I'm not saying that it's right, but in many of these communities. So in South Dakota, they may not have a problem with the teacher, I don't know if it's going to be concealed or not, but carrying a firearm. Of course, in a school system of 1 million kids, that's something that we would hope that would never fly.
Maybe we can just admit we're a properly failed state and just have kids go to school with bodyguards like they do in South America. I mean, is that what we want to be as a society? I mean, look, we can't even trust experienced police officers not to discharge their guns in schools. So obviously the solution isn't putting more guns in schools. That's just crazy.
Well, but I think that certainly I'm one that if we're going to have a gun in school, I'd rather have a law enforcement officer, someone from the NYPD or the New York State Police or some law enforcement throughout the tri-state area.
Let me take you back to the incident in Highland, New York that we were talking about a minute ago, because you had an officer, an armed guard in the school, and his pistol discharged in the middle of the hallway. We've had talks since Newtown about somebody being armed in schools. To me, you're going to have accidents. What if two kids are having a fight in school? Does the person with the gun intervene there? Have we moved past the armed guard in school thing, or do you think that's still a viable option?
There's a practical reality. While that will never be a solution here, it's too expensive. School districts do not have the ability to go hire an armed guard and put them in their schools, regardless of whether they wanted that or not. But I think, moreover, what was missing from this debate from the very beginning is cause and effect. Sandy Hook was the impetus. So if you armed everybody or you took guns away, would you prevent a Sandy from happening? The answer to both questions, I believe, is no, because you had mental health.
If you had an assault weapons ban, he wouldn't have had those weapons.
But he still would have had a weapon.
Well,
You-
yeah,
you-
yeah,
you
but
feel
killing,
it had
killing,
one-
but killing 3 kids is different than killing 26.
is the
It
goal-
really
Is it okay?
is. Yeah, well, ask the 17 other parents if it's different. I mean,
Or
clearly.
talk to those 3.
Is the goal here to try to prevent another Sandy Hook or another Columbine, or is the goal here to try to reduce gun violence
reduce
across
gun
the board?
violence.
Okay, but now the question is, violence, like in the city of New York, has never been lower, ever. No, the murder rates, I mean, it's statewide. Crime has been doing this. So now's the time you come and say we're going to attack gun violence? I mean, when you think about it, drugs is still a huge issue.
But
We should really be going after drugs. I think more effectively than we are now. And the big problem with guns is the importation of guns into states illegally.
Absolutely.
You know, we have a ton of laws on the books, and they don't seem to be very effective in stopping people from driving into places in the city and opening the back trunk, and here you go. Here's a whole bunch of guns. Go. Here, give me cash, and you leave.
I just want to go back to your New York City example, because yes, crime is
Yeah.
historically low, but that's not because New York. I mean, are you saying that's because New York has fairly tight gun control laws for the city, or because the federal government has fairly lax gun
The
control
Sullivan
laws?
Law, which is the law for concealed weapons in New York State, is one of the strictest laws in the nation in terms of a concealed weapon carry ability.
But with stricter gun laws, couldn't we reduce that crime rate even further?
There's no indication that that's true. I mean, you would think intuitively that's the case. There's never been a study that said if you ramp down even more, if you make it even more strict, you'd have less, because the statistics are out there, and I've studied this now for almost 20 years. Registered handgun owners don't commit the crimes with the weapons. They don't.
All I can tell you is that for this argument that, give them a gun and a dream. I mean, put them in school.
weirdest lottery ever.
Yeah, I know, but put them in the school and that'll stop the shootings.
Yeah, well,
Here's my response to that, and I don't know if the NYPD still does this, but myself, many years ago, and a few other journalists, they used to have this a simulation house that they put you in. They put me in the house. They give you a fake gun, and there's a scenario, and it's other cops that are playing the roles. I ended up shooting the wrong person. And let me tell you what happens. You don't understand these shootings. And I was in a fake situation. You don't understand how much adrenaline kicks in. You feel like you're about to have a heart attack. And that was a simulated situation. So imagine there are real bullets flying past your head, and you know this is real. Imagine what's going to happen then.
So clearly, any gun control scenario is going to involve Dominic not getting his hands on a gun. I think,
no
I think that
guns,
we're going to.
no guns.
Well, unfortunately, we have to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to head to New York, where controversy is swirling around Mayor Bloomberg's proposed soda ban. As you may have heard, a judge put the brakes on that plan today, one day before it was going to go into effect. Was his plan the epitome of a nanny state or just good government? That debate is coming up next. Stay with us.